Hello and welcome to SFPE's Best Practices Chapter webinar. My name is Julie Gordon, SFPE's new Membership and Chapter Relations Manager. I will serve as today's webinar moderator. Please note all participants are muted. However, we do encourage you to send in your questions via the chat box or questions box located on your control panel. These will be collected and addressed at the conclusion of the presentation. First, I'd like to introduce J.C. Harrington, the SFPE Board Chapter Liaison for the chapters. He would like to say a few words. J.C.?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. As Julie mentioned, I'm on our SFPE International Board, and I work along with Julie on the chapter support activities. And the best practice seminars, webinars that we have for chapter leaders are something that we started earlier this year, really is an offshoot of some of the activities of our Chapter Support Council. And what we're trying to do with these is enhancing our services to the chapters and trying to help chapters as they start out new activities and programs, making things easier to do that. The intent of these, as we deliver them and as we advertise them, they're intended for all chapter leaders, so not just the chapter presidents. So those of you that are on the call today, I'd encourage you, as you hear about these programs in the future and as you see the notices, make sure you share them with all of your chapter officers who can hopefully benefit with those. And our intention, when we started this out, and it's our intention to continue to deliver these on about a quarterly basis. So the next intended webinar that we would look to be doing will be during December at the close of this year. And as you go forward, if you have any thoughts on future webinar topics that would be of benefit to the chapter folks at large, feel free to send those suggestions on to either myself or on to Julie at headquarters. Thanks, Julie. I'll turn it back to you now.
Thank you. Today's presenter is Chris Jelenewicz, SFPE's Engineering Program Manager. Chris is responsible for overseeing SFPE's licensing activities as well as leading the profession and SFPE's goals to gain increased professional recognition. Chris will be presenting Start a PR Program for your SFPE chapter. At this time, I will turn over the presentation to Chris.
Thank you very much, Julie. Thanks for everybody who's come to today's webinar. Basically, increased recognition of our profession has always been one of SFPE's top goals. Currently, it's in our strategic plan, and we're revising our strategic plan even now, and I'm sure we will see recognition of the profession in that strategic plan also. Also, this is something that our chapters have always played a significant role in, whether they even know it or not. So I should probably have changed the name of my presentation to maybe developing a program or developing your program, a PR program for your chapter. But anyway, the one thing we like to know is I'm going to talk about a lot of information, a lot of different ideas I'm going to throw out. I'm not really expecting everybody to say, hey, let's do everything Chris talked about today, and nobody is really expecting that. If there's something that your chapter finds interesting, that I say, go with that. Also, the stuff I'm going to be talking today has been implemented by our Public Awareness Committee that started about 10 years ago. So let's get moving here. The one thing I'm going to talk about today, and a lot of the things we talk about public relations, is answering the question of why. And why is public recognition, important to our profession? Well, a Harris poll on the public perceptions of engineering, I think this poll was performed about 5 years ago, indicated that over half the U.S. public don't know what engineers are or what engineers do. Actually, anybody who's been in the profession shouldn't be surprised by that statistic. At the same time, add fire protection in front of the word engineer, and you're really going to get people scratching their head. I'm sure anybody who's worked in this profession has seen that, whether you're talking to your family, your friends, or even your business colleagues will say, how many times have you heard, what is a fire protection engineer? You might change that picture. Well, a lot of times when people say, what are engineers, they think an engineer is the guy that's driving the train here. I think one of the reasons why the public really doesn't understand what an engineer is really in pop culture, we see doctors, we see lawyers, we see police officers in our TV shows. We don't really see too many engineers. And actually in our pop culture, probably the most popular engineer out there today is our good friend Dilbert. I'm sure everybody knows who he is. A lot of times you might feel like Dilbert. But actually it doesn't really portray engineering as a very exciting profession. If anybody's ever seen the show Big Bang Theory, it's kind of a show about nerds who are actually very cool guys. But the funny thing about the Big Bang Theory, this guy Howard Wolowitz, who is an engineer, his other three friends are PhDs who are scientists. And actually, all throughout the program, they make fun of him because he's an engineer, because he doesn't meet the status of a PhD scientist. So when you're thinking about your chapter's public recognition program, your PR program, whatever you want to call it, I think your first step to think about is choosing your audience. At SFPE, there's really three audiences we focus on. So we're really answering the question, you really want to answer the question, who? Who are we talking to? Who is going to care about what we have to say? Who's going to care about fire protection engineers? When I discuss these audiences, of course, like I said before, not every one of these audiences might work perfectly with your chapter. However, once again, I say pick out the bits and pieces that really work. And the first audience that we focus on is the general public. We want the world, everybody in the world, to really understand what fire protection engineers do. We also want to tell them about the dangers of fire, and that fire is a problem, and that fire protection engineers, we're the people there that are solving this fire problem that we have. The second audience that you can or cannot focus on, that we focus on at SFPE, is students. Maybe this is kind of a broad term, just throwing out the word students, but really we're looking at anybody who could possibly enter our profession, telling them that fire protection engineering is a really exciting and rewarding profession. And that audience could include high school students. That's usually the first thing people think about. A lot of research that I've seen about professions, and when I talk to guidance counselors and things like that, that they're even indicating that people are making career choices even before high school. So it doesn't even hurt to talk to people even in the younger than high school age. At the same time, we could be looking at people in community colleges that are pursuing engineering, or even engineering graduates, or people who are about to graduate from a school of engineering. Our Hawaii chapter has a great relationship with the University of Hawaii. They don't have a fire protection engineering school, but there's a lot of talented grads who are mechanical engineers, civil engineers. So the chapter does a lot of work of going out to that school and talking to them, and that's how they recruit a lot of the engineers out there in Hawaii. And also, finally, parents, showing the parents that this is an attractive profession, because a lot of times the parents are the ones paying the bill. So if they're paying a lot of money to send their kids off to school, it's good for them to know that they're going to get into a good, solid profession. And finally, our other audience is design professionals. The people we work with as fire protection engineers, they could be your architects, they could be your engineers of other disciplines, they could be your code officials, they could be the people from the fire service, the fire departments, the code officials, the fire marshals, also facility managers and building owners. Not always thinking, a lot of people might think maybe potential clients. It's not always potential clients, but the people that walk in the room, whether it's an architect or an engineer and a code official, when you say, hey, I'm a fire protection engineer, it's good to know, when you walk into the room, that they know what a fire protection engineer is and what you do have to offer when you walk into that room. Once you decided what audience or audiences you really want to reach to, the next thing is really to, or I'll call it step 2, is to develop common messages. And these messages are very important. And the first thing when we're talking about messages, we're really going to ask the question why. Why is this important? Any of your messages or the information we want to get out to our audience, should answer the question why. Also, understanding how and where could also be important. But when you develop your messages, you go talk to the media or you're writing an article, it's always important to think about repeating these messages, repeating them, saying the same thing in different ways. Because a lot of times, a lot of studies on media relations tell us, hey, we need to repeat the message so that message will stick. One thing I do suggest to people is if you watch the TV news and see people being interviewed, some people are very good at it. And you can see how they bring their messages up in an interview 2 or 3 times. If you've ever seen an interview with Donald Trump, whether you like Donald or you don't like Donald, which seems like that's probably the opinion most people have, either you like him or don't like him. When you see him do his interviews, you can see how he always gets his message points out, and he will also always say them 1, 2, or 3 times. So when we develop these messages, it's always important. It's very important that these messages are understandable to your audience. And as an engineers, that's something we always have to watch because we are in a very technical field. But the one thing to remember, as things become more complex, the general public, of course, has a less understanding of things. So, for example, when you see one of the first slides I put up there that said, hey, only 50% of the population understands an engineer is, well, it's probably not a good idea to use the word engineer in one of your messages. To say that fire protection engineers, engineer fire safety in your message might not be the best thing to be telling a reporter or telling somebody because, right then you'd be losing 50% of your audience. Right then 50% of the people would not understand what you would be talking about. Throwing out words like computational fluid dynamics to the general public as your audience, or even some of the people as design professionals or high school students, might throw people off. It's also important that your messages be interesting to the audience, because if they're not interesting to the audience or the press, they're not really going to care about printing your story or putting you on the news. The important thing to remember is tell a good story. The media loves good stories. They need good stories. As fire protection engineers, I think we have a lot of opportunities out there to tell good stories. So for example, at that chapter level, issuing a press release about somebody who won an award, or maybe we're having a chapter meeting on Tuesday in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. Hey, that's interesting. That's very interesting to your members. But at the same time, it might not be something that's interesting to the media. However, things like maybe you're having an exhibit at one of your events, send a note to the press and say, hey, we're going to have an exhibit with the latest, greatest technologies that are protecting people from fire, that are making people safe. I think that might be something the media would be interested in seeing and showing on their TV station. Or the fact that the Central Savannah River chapter put in a sprinkler system for one of the local firehouses that was rebuilt after it burned down. I think that's a great human interest story that the media, would love to hear. And finally, our messages really need to be supportive of our goals, and that goal is always advancing the science and practice of fire protection engineering. So always think back on what do you want to tell these people, make sure that it's following what we are really doing is advancing the profession. So looking at the general public as our audience, the first message that we try to get out is that fire is a problem. We're not necessarily telling the press, hey, fire is a noteworthy problem, but, saying things like, hey, each year it's 3,000 people die as a result of fire. And when you're talking to the general public, people that know that, they never heard that before. Or talk about, how many structural fires occur each year. Looking up some of these statistics, a lot of times when I go to a non-fire protection group to give a presentation, I kind of make the statement, hey, just wanted you to know that during this presentation, there's probably going to be about 10 structural fires across the United States. Now, I'm not talking about a fire alarm responding to false alarms or anything. These are going to be legitimate fires. These are going to be your homes. These are going to be the place where your kids go to school. These are going to be the places where you go to work. Those kind of messages really hit hard with the public. Also talking about, the cost of fire, how it costs us billions of dollars each year. Another message people don't really think about is business continuity. Knowing the fact that when you come out to work the next morning, you want the place of work to be there. A great story to tell is the Meridian Plaza high-rise fire that occurred in Philadelphia. The fact that in the modern day we had a significant high-rise fire that was so bad that they had to actually demolish a high-rise building in the middle of Center City, Philadelphia. Now, if that building was designed properly, they probably would not be demolishing that building this day. Or even things about the environment. That's always a hot topic this year. I mean, not this year, but currently. Even one time a press called me. There was a fire in a building that was next to a river, and I guess as a result of this fire, some chemicals released in the river, and the reporter, wanted me to say, hey, it's not a good idea to build your building next to a river because these things could happen and we could damage the environment. And I told the reporter, I said, well, I don't really think you're looking at the right concept here. I think you need to be really thinking about, you should really be asking the question is, why do we have a fire that was so significant that we had a release? Why was this building designed correctly so that we wouldn't have fires in them that are so significant that would cause chemicals? I think that's the really thing you need to be thinking about. Our other message to the general public is fire protection engineers use science and technology to make our world safer from fire. So, really saying, hey, we're here to help. We're really here to solve the fire problem. The people are interested in stories about even things like computer models where you could compare them maybe to the weather models. Hey, you ever see how the weatherman has his model that tracks hurricanes? Well, we could do the same thing with fire, and hopefully ours are even better than predicting the weather than some of those. Human behavior, talking about how we use human behavior to protect people. Making statements about, hey, did you know that most people don't respond when a fire alarm sounds in their building? They're topics that are very interesting to the media, and to show how fire protection engineers, design the right systems so that people do respond when there is a fire. And then finally, I think is tying everything together, the holistic approach that, hey, it's just not one technology or the next technology, but hey, we're making all these different systems, whether it's your sprinkler system, your fire alarm system, your smoke man. We're like the conductor here. We're working them all together, to make our building safe. And it's really when they work all together, our systems and everything else, that we have safe buildings. So we got our audience put together. We want to talk to the general public. We got our message points together. Okay, what do we do next? Well, some of the recommendations I have are, one, first is really start to develop relationships with your local print media. Everybody has a local newspaper in their area. Start reading the newspaper. See who the editors are writing stories about fires. See who's covering the fires. Usually on their website, you could contact them. They have email contacts, or at least a contact to the general editor, and say, hey, we're from the Society of Fire Protection Engineer. We're the experts when it comes to building fire protection, fire safety. If you ever have a fire, if you need technical advice, give us a call. It could be something as a one-paragraph email. Actually, they're always the best. Just keep it simple. A lot of times they'll write back because editors are always looking for good technical sources for a story. So they would probably put that in their file of experts when they need somebody. The next area is your local TV news. Once again, watch your local TV news stations. I suggest the morning shows are always good. It seems like the local news stations have some kind of wacky, goofy morning show. They usually have, anchor person, a weather person, a traffic person, and they also usually have a person that's out on the street, one or two people that are out there measuring the snow, with their ruler when the snow happens, or they're, out there when the big rainstorm is coming out. It's usually that same person in the morning. Try to get a contact with that person and say, hey, it's fire prevention week. I think you guys should be doing a story about fire. Come on over to our workplace here, and we could show you how we protect people from fires, or we could show you some of the latest technologies to protect people from fire. Local talk radio. I'm sure a lot of people, when you're driving down in the morning, some people might be listening to local talk radio, but listen to those talk radio stations. Once again, the morning stations usually have a lot of public type, general knowledge type stories. I think the best way to get in there is, look on their website and look for the producers of the talk radio show and say, hey, once again, contact SFPE, contact us. We're a source for you. News releases, I think, are always important. A lot of people want to put news releases down. I think they have their purpose. I think the big thing to think about when you're writing a news release is to follow those rules of, make sure it's understandable, make sure it's important. And specifically, when an editor reads a news release, they want the answer to the question why. Why is this important? Why would our people care? So you definitely want to send them something newsworthy, like maybe an anniversary of an important fire that occurred. Put out a news release. Hey, 10 years ago we had this fire. 10 people were killed. Maybe it would be a good idea to do a story about this. And this is another area that we at SFPE headquarters are always welcome to help and talk to people and your chapters about crafting things like news releases. And the other thing is, when you send them out, you don't need any big media list or anything like that. Just attach it to an email and send it to some of these reporters that you already identified that might be interested in covering your stories. Like I said, they're usually happy to get these kind of things. They probably won't use them all the time, but they're always looking for good ideas. Some of the success we had at SFPE headquarters, we've been on the cover of USA Today twice. We've been on the front story of the CBS Nightly News. We've been in the New York Times. The public television is another place. They always do a lot of shows. That's the picture there is me at a public television show out in Cincinnati during the anniversary of a fire that occurred out there. The Washington Post, they're a really nice article, and I've seen others do a lot of nice articles about fire protection engineers and what they're doing. So that might be something else to identify in your local newspaper. Who's covering careers and employment? And send them an email. It doesn't even have to be anything, I would keep it very short and say, hey, have you ever heard of a fire protection engineer before? We use science and technology to protect people from fire. Fire is a big problem. People are dying every day from fire, and we don't have enough fire protection engineers. It's an exciting story, and I think the media would think that's an exciting story also, as we have seen some really important local newspapers have done career-related stories. Going on to our next audience, which is students. There's an interesting report if anybody's interested. It's called Changing the Conversation, Messages from Improving the Public Understanding of Engineering. by the National Academies Press. You can find it on their website. A very interesting article where they interviewed a lot of different students out there and asked them about their perceptions of engineering. And it's really helpful when you're really putting together a PR program. And one of the big things that came was, hey, additionally, when we ask kids what an engineer is, they say, oh, they do science and math, and I don't like science and math. Or they say, engineering is very hard. I don't like hard. So it's good that, hey, you need to know that maybe that engineering is difficult. You may need to know, science and math, but, they found out there's better messages you could get out there. One, that you're making a difference. Engineers do make a difference. And that's one thing we kind of focused in some of our messages here at SFPE. And one of the first messages is to talk about the demand problem. Anytime a parent is sending their kids off to school or somebody wants to go to school, some people think, hey, am I going to have a job when I get out of school? Especially when we're talking about this thing, fire protection engineering. What is fire? I don't even know what that is. How am I going to get a job in that? So to talk about, hey, you're going to have a job when you graduate. Talk to the colleges. They're going to tell you that their students are in demand. Talk to the employers. They're going to tell you, hey, when I need to find a fire protection engineer, it can be difficult at times. And also, I don't know if you've seen the latest results of the SFPE compensation survey. They were just released last week. If you haven't, go to our blog, blog.sfpe.org. And one of the exciting or interesting things, I wouldn't say exciting, but interesting things we found in the survey is that 25% of the people surveyed indicated that they plan on retiring in the next 10 years. So the profession that we already have a demand problem, now we're going to lose 25% more. Wow, that could be a really tough challenge for us as a profession and us at SFPE, that's for sure. The other message is for our students is, hey, it pays well. You're going to make a good living. Hey, that's important to kids. It might sound self-serving, but hey, when you want to get into a career, knowing that you can make a decent salary helps. Also provides opportunities for world travel. I'm sure a lot of people in our profession could say, hey, wow, I've been to a lot of cool places as a result of being a fire protection engineer. And then finally, which is another thing that I think is interesting, is that you get to work in a variety of work environments. You're not doing the same thing every day. You're not designing the same type of widget or whatever you're designing every day. You're doing all different kind of exciting projects. And finally, our final message, which actually I think the most important is fire protection engineers make the world a better place. And once again, these messages, we're not saying, hey, fire protection engineers make the world a better place, but, making the point that, hey, fire protection engineers make a difference. They're protecting people from fire. Anybody you talk to as a fire protection engineer is going to tell you, one of the best things about this job is knowing that, hey, I have the opportunity to make the world a better place. People are going to be safer because of the work I do. Here are some of the pictures from some of our fine chapters. As I mentioned, a lot of chapters are out doing some PR stuff already. Like I said, they might not even know it. Right here we have our New York Metro chapter. There's Tom Gray representing the Chicago chapter, our New Jersey chapter. There's our great Hawaii chapter out at the University of Hawaii. What I was telling you about, our Pittsburgh chapter with this electronic video fire extinguisher game they got here. And then our Central Virginia chapter. So a lot of times our chapters are taking it, what I call taking it to the streets. Going to career fairs, whether they're at colleges, other engineering organizations are holding these career fairs. Getting some of the materials from SFPE that I'm going to talk about, and in other places, information from schools and things like that. Also, going out to the guidance counselors, telling them each year SFPE headquarters does exhibit at the National Association for Guidance Counselors, and it's always a great experience because Anytime somebody comes up to our booth, they're like, what is a fire protection engineer? I never heard of that before. And one of the things that I was talking about is our careers issue of our magazine, which is called Careers in Fire Protection Engineering, as opposed to Fire Protection Engineering magazine. It comes out every 2 years. And actually, our newest edition will be coming out at the same time as our annual meeting in October. So if you come to our annual meeting in October, you could get one of the first copies, but everybody who's a member will also get a copy with their existing fire protection engineering subscription. We also get mass quantities to our officers, to pass out at presentations that headquarters does, but also presentations that our presentations are exhibits that our local chapters do. And we often pass these out to our local chapters, and they've found them to be very useful. A very great guide. It interviews 3 fire protection engineers who recently graduated to talk about the career. We talk about salaries. We talk about other career type interesting information. Also, if you haven't heard or seen our Chemistry of Fire kit before, we do still have quantities available. We have a new shipment actually coming in. Besides passing this out to every high school in the United States and New Zealand, since we started this program, we've given out over 5,000 copies. And we're ordering a new batch today. It's very popular with high school teachers. It's a way of introducing the chemistry of fire, the science of fire to high school teachers as a way of providing practical applications to what the kids are in class. So when the kids are saying, what the hell do we need to balance equations for? What does that mean? We have a whole section say, hey, this is why you balance equations. Here's some combustion reactions, and this is how we use this information, to protect people from fire. It also has some great videos in there, if you haven't seen the videos, of some great experiments that they could do in a lab with simple things like candles and Bunsen burners. And it has a nice little careers video in it that talks about careers and what fire protection is all about. Once again, this is another resource you can get from SFPE headquarters. And one thing you can do as a chapter is just, hey, just take this to your local high school teacher. We've always found that teachers find this very exciting. Also, we have a careers website, a website dedicated just to the audience that I'm calling students, or people that are interested in finding more about career, career choices. Now, it's not a jobs board. It's really a job to get career information, like what is a fire protection engineer? Where can I go to school? Probably the best listing of schools available globally is on this website. Also has a lot of information on scholarships. We have a listing of all our chapter scholarships. So if your chapter does offer a scholarship, take a look at that site under Preparing for College. Right up here, and there's a box for scholarships. See if you have one, if it's listed there, we have the right contact information and the right information about your scholarship, because we like to keep that information as accurate as possible. We also have a Facebook page that's a dedicated Facebook page that's also dedicated to careers. It's not a general SFPE page or information about SFPE, but just a place where somebody's looking to become a fire protection engineer, just to give them more information. Anytime a chapter does an event like a career fair or something, I ask them to send us pictures, send us a 3-sentence write-up, and we'll post you on Facebook, because that's another way we like to congratulate our chapters for doing a lot of hard work. So if you do look at that site, you will see, some of the career events that our chapters have participated in. And if you have participated in one and you're not up there, hey, give us a call. Send us some pictures. We love the good active content up on that site. Future Cities is another thing that some of our chapters work with us on. It's a national competition where kids get together with an engineering mentor and they design a city of the future. The competition is held at a local level, so a lot of our chapters have an award for fire protection. You know, how do you implement a fire protection program in your city, just like a lot of the other engineering organizations do. And then whoever wins the local competition gets to go on to the national finals in Washington, D.C., where SFPE also gives out an award. Also, guidance counselor outreach. You know, I think I mentioned before, we like to go out to guidance counselor organizations, talk to them at a local level. It's just taking one of our career guides through. Sure to say, I never heard of this before. A lot of them might even ask that you come out and do a presentation to their students. And that's a good transition because we also have a PowerPoint presentation. To get the latest copy, contact me and I could get you a copy of if you're going out to a high school or a group and want to talk about fire protection and engineering. When it comes to design professionals, our messages are, you know, fire protection engineers save time and money. You know, get a fire protection engineer on your project, get them in there early. You know, let's design it right the first time. Let's get everything done right the first time. We'll save you a lot of time and money. Bridging industries is also an interesting message, saying, hey, you know, if you have a fire protection engineer on your project, hey, we're the people that know how to talk to the code officials. We are the people that know how to talk to the local fire departments. And when we're talking to architects, you know, hey, we could, you know, talk to the local fire department, let them understand what you're trying to do. And finally, allowing innovation, you know, with performance-based design and then some of the things we could do. You'd never be able to build some of the interesting buildings like you see here, like the Venetian Hotel, the Stratosphere, the Luxor, the pool. Right here is the pool, the Olympics that Michael Phelps won all his gold medals at in Beijing, China. And then also, of course, minimizing risk is something that we do a great job of. So how do we get our messages out to design professionals? Well, at a national level, we regularly talk to trade magazines. At a local level, you know, every little, not little, but every area has their own local fire service magazines, engineering design magazines. For example, you know, the state of Pennsylvania, they have this thing called the Pennsylvania Fireman. They have a lot of articles about fire service things. There's a lot of good messages we could bring to the fire service. You know, contact the local fire service magazine in your area and say, hey, do you ever need articles? I bet you a lot of the editors are going to say, yeah, we really do need articles. Do you mind, hey, do you mind if we write a couple about fire protection engineering? What fire service you know about fire protection engineering? What the fire service you know about fire dynamics? I think they'll find them interesting. Also, local NSPE chapters, a lot of them have newsletters or little magazines that they're also looking for good content. Making presentations to your local chapters of AIA or your other engineering societies or your fire service organizations. I've seen some chapters have joint meetings with some of these organizations. It's another way for the two organizations to work out together. Actually, the AIA, last year we've had a lot of success with our fire service committee, which has a very nice presentation called A Primer for Building and System Designers, which really talks about issues related to how do we design a building properly so that the fire service, you know, won't be hindered, or how can we help the fire service in our designs? You know, let's put the fire department connection in the front of the building instead of the back of the building. Simple things like that even, but a lot of good information to and the AIA chapters that we've took it to have found it to be a really exciting presentation. We got great feedback on it, and at the same time, the AIA chapters are just like our SFPE chapters. You know, one of the hardest thing to do is really to find good content or people to come out and give your presentations. So it doesn't hurt to call your local organizations and try to set up presentations with some of the leadership or people on your committees that are interested in doing these kind of presentations. This presentation is posted on the SFPE website, or I can send you a copy if you need it. So you've done all your work, you thought about your audience, you thought about the messages you're going to get out, you did all your homework, now you get the call. Hey, we want to do an interview with your chapter president or somebody from your chapter. Talk about a fire that just happened. A couple things to do and don't I'm going to talk about. First of all, do prepare. Preparation is very important. Never take a cold call. So if a reporter calls you and says, hey, do you have a second to talk about this fire? The first question to ask them, hey, when's your deadline? Once they tell you the deadlines, even if it's a 15-minute or a half an hour delay, say, hey, do we mind if we talk 15 minutes from now, a half an hour, if their deadline's extended into a week, do we mind if we talk tomorrow? It's never a good idea just to take a cold call from a reporter and just try to answer questions. So before the interview, prepare yourself. If they're doing a story about, why ionization smoke detectors are killing everybody, sit down and think about, hey, do your research, learn everything you need to know, even though you probably know it by now. It never hurts to look over things. Write down some notes, be prepared, and craft your messages. What kind of messages? We're talking about smoke detectors. What kind of messages do I want to get out, and how do I match our other messages? Do provide sound technical information. Make sure you're always telling them good technical support, and at the same time, there are things that SFPE has taken a position under our position statements. I encourage you to look at our position statements on our website and to make sure that if you are making statements to the public that you are complying with them. Bridging to your talking points is always important. So if a reporter asks you a question maybe you're not that excited about, or maybe isn't really the important point they could be thinking about, try to answer their question kind of quickly and say, hey, but the important thing you need to be talking about is that we need to be doing A, B, and C. D is kind of important. One trap I always find reporters do is usually when there's like a fire. An example was a fire up in New York City in a high-rise residential building, and the media got stuck on voice alarm systems. We need legislation for voice alarm systems. We really ask our people when you're talking to the public to avoid, trying to recommend certain legislation versus others, but more to provide good technical sound knowledge. So when they ask about a voice alarm system, give them the real information. Hey, voice alarm systems are awesome. If you want to evacuate a high-rise building, that is a great system to have. But supporting, legislation for voice alarm systems by itself might not mean anything, because you really have to look at, fire protection as a whole. Consider things like fire suppression systems, considering things about exits. You don't want to be the person saying, hey, voice alarm systems, nobody, that's all you need to do, and then the building, you have another high-rise building a week later, and then you're on the record saying that. So just, hey, there's nothing wrong with voice alarm systems. Just say, hey, they're great systems. They should be in every high-rise building, but not really advocating the legislation part of it. Dressing appropriately if you are going to be filmed is very important. You don't always have to wear a tie. It's good to look, what I would say, cool, but maybe not too cool. Avoid, one thing about this picture here is to avoid this kind of prints. It's always good to have solid colors. The media does not like logos. A lot of people want to come on with their SFPE logo. A lot of time cameramen don't like that. They don't come out good on film, and they'll probably end up, filming you from the side that their logo is not on anyway. Also, provide visuals. If you're coming to talk about smoke detectors or whatever, fire protect, bring some sprinklers along. Bring a smoke detector along and say, hey, look at this. This is what one of these really looks like. Also, do follow up. If you do an interview with a newspaper, it never hurts to just contact that reporter with a quick email and say, hey, I enjoyed the email. If you need our help in the future, give us a call. I think they really do appreciate those kind of follow-ups. Never say off-the-record statements when you're talking to a reporter. Nothing is ever off the record. So just remember, anything you say can be put in print or quoted. Don't use jargon or acronyms are, once again, things that people don't understand. That's pretty self-explanatory. Also, we're not here to attack the media. At the same time, it's very rare that I've seen anybody have an attack interview in our profession from the media. I'm not saying that it's possible or not possible, but you don't want to attack them. Take a look at what's another thing to look at right now in the news media is how the NFL is really dealing with this story that's out right now. It seems like they're trying to attack the media, and it's looking to me, anyway, from what I could tell, the strategy is on the back line. Never say no comment. That might think that you're trying to hide something. You know, that's why I say do your preparation. Now, that's not saying answering a question you don't have an answer to. It's always good to say, if they ask you a question that you don't know the answer for, say, hey, right now, I don't know. I don't know what that answer is, but I will get back to you later on. A couple things about social media. Some of our chapters have gotten into social media. One thing I stress about that, which we could probably have a whole chapter chat about, is choose wisely. It is a good, free, easy way to get your messages out to a lot of people. But remember, it is work, and it is important, you know, to keep content into these type of things if you do want to use that as part of your PR strategy. So I think if you take these points, work with SFPE staff, feel free to call me all the time, do your homework, prepare, you could get great results from developing a great PR strategy. And right now I will open it up to questions. If you don't have time to get your question answered, or you would like some of the things I talked about, or if you ever want to draft a news release, or you need help with your chapter coming up with ideas of what you should do, anything I can help, feel free to email me at Chris, C-H-R-I-S, at sfpe.org, or you can find me on LinkedIn by just searching the easy term Jelenewicz. It's hard to get it right, but once you get it in there right, you won't see too many other Jelenowiczes up there. So thank you for your time. I hope you take some of my advice and go out and put it to good use. And right now I'll turn it over to Julie. Hello? Julie?
Could you hear me?
Yeah, can now.
Oh, sorry. I want to thank you for your time and taking today's best practices webinar. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to forward them on to Chris or myself. We'd be more than happy to help you. We have recorded today's webinar, and we will be posting it shortly, and we'll let all the chapters know. So thank you and have a great day.